Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Adobe Live. I'm super excited to be here today to talk to you guys about some essential tips and tricks that all Illustrator users should know. If you don't know me, my name is Kelsey Slay. I'm a graphic designer, a content creator, and an Adobe Design Evangelist. So we all know Illustrator is an amazing software, but it can be really complex and hard to learn, especially for beginners. So that's exactly why I started this series on Adobe Live. This is actually part 3 of my series around Illustrator tips and tricks that you should know. So if you haven't watched part 2 and part 1, definitely go back and watch them. Like I said, this is very beginner friendly for the beginners. And if you worked in Illustrator for a good amount of time, hopefully you find a tip or two that maybe you didn't know. I mean, I've worked in Illustrator for years now, and I still see things online or come across things in Illustrator that I had no idea even existed. So hopefully you find a tip or two from this one, but let's go ahead and hop right in. I swear these lives I blink and they're over. So as a new designer, when I first started learning Illustrator, I would see, and I'm sure you've probably seen like badge designs like this, thinking like, how do I get this type to kind of warp around this object or kind of create this shape? Because, if you just go over right to your type tool, it's just straight type. And when I first started learning Illustrator, I was like, how do I even do this? Just really confused on how to do this. And as you can see on our side panel, any tool that has like this little triangle corner, if you hover down, it'll actually open up a bunch of other tools that are tucked away. This is another reason why I feel like Illustrator, there's so many tips and tools that you may never come across unless you kind of look through and dig through these tools. And so let me show you how we can actually kind of create something like this to start off with. So first, we're going to start with a shape. Let's go ahead and just make a generalized shape. I'm actually going to change this and just do a stroke on it so you can kind of see. How's the chat doing? Everyone's doing great. Awesome. And let's go ahead and turn up this stroke a little bit. So now that we've kind of gotten our shape, we want to create, this type around this circle. We'll actually go back over to the text box, click and hold, and then let's go to type on path tool. So once you have that, you'll just hover over this and click. And just like that, your type is now all around the circle. Now, let's go ahead and just write something more than just filler text. So let's just do like Adobe Live is the coolest. I'm actually not going to create a final badge. I'm just showing you how this tool works because if we did a final badge, it probably would take me the whole life because I'm such a perfectionist. But as you can see, you have full control to turn up the font to make it bigger as well as change the font. So if you wanted something more fun, you can do that. But a few things about this tool. Let's kind of scroll in. As you can see, we have these little widgets right here. And if you hold these, this kind of helps you adjust what your tool is doing. So with this, if I pull this, you can see I can kind of adjust my text, pull it all the way to the end. Maybe I want to flip it. And I can set up these kind of boundaries in this bounding box with these different panels right here. So this is kind of where you have that control to kind of adjust the width of what your type can kind of allow and set up this different type. Like I can pull this and kind of adjust this to my liking. Maybe I want to add some text on the bottom, kind of like this one. But the biggest thing about this tool is that if you go up to type, we go all the way down to type on path and we go to type on path options. This is really where you'll probably be hanging out the most because this is where all the features and kind of all the adjustments besides kind of pulling the type in the right direction. So I can go ahead and click preview. And as you can see, we have different kind of effects. Like I typically stick with rainbow, but we also have skew. We also have 3D ribbon. These are like a little funky. I've never really used these, but if you have a use case for them, like go right ahead. Gravity, and then you can also flip it depending on the preference that you have for whatever you're creating, whether it's a badge. You can also align to different things. So we can do, baseline, you can do center, all these other options. So this is really where you have that control to make whatever you want with this tool. And you can also adjust the spacing. So if the text is kind of looking a little wonky, kind of going around whatever shape you're doing, because this also works not just on circles, but any sort of path that you might have. So you can kind of adjust this spacing as you see fit. So let's go ahead and hit OK. Now let's go to the next tool I want to show you. So I kind of have, these little icons, like this is an arrow and even some text. And let's just say you kind of wanted to rotate this. And so typically, you just go over and rotate. And this does the job, but I want to introduce you to the shear tool. So this is kind of adjusting where it's pointing, and this looks great if you wanted to do this, but if you wanted to make it look a little bit more dimensional, I'm going to introduce you to the shear tool. So let's go ahead and hover over. We can kind of see the scale tool is actually the original tool that this tool is tucked underneath. Like I said, there's so many tools that are tucked underneath this side panel. You could probably spend all day with this. So I can actually go over and click the shear tool, and let's go ahead and hover. And as you can see, I can lay a point where I think is the center or wherever I want to kind of skew. So I'm going to kind of lay it right here. And once I do that, now I'm just going to pull, and this is going to adjust and kind of morph and skew. Now it can get really funky really quick, so you got to be really careful with how much you skew. I mean, you can skew it as much as you want, but I kind of just want to add a little bit more of a realistic skew and have it point in a direction and kind of make it a little bit more dimensional. So even something like that, if you're going for this like kind of effect, let's try it on text, because you also can do it on text or any object realistically. And let's go ahead and do the same thing, point, and then we're just going to drag. And like I said, it gets pretty crazy really quick, so you got to be careful. It's pretty sensitive. Like it's kind of giving me problems right now. Let's see. Let's hover. Let me see if I can lay the skew again, because if you ever gives you kind of problems, I just kind of relay the skew and then I just adjust it. So if you're someone that doesn't like to see text kind of stretched, close your eyes. But I think it's fun for its different use cases. And this tool is just kind of fun to kind of add that effect. Maybe you're trying to break some of the design rules or do an anti-design kind of effect, which is something that I think is super cool. And I've used this tool a lot on like logos or even different taglines, just to kind of add that effect and give it more of a realistic look. So let's go over to the next tool that I want to talk to you about. Now, as a new designer, when I first started, I didn't know this tool existed for the longest time. I'm a little embarrassed to say that because I was doing all of these little things wrong. So, I have this kind of shape right here. It's pretty, it's a cloud, has all these different corners. And what I would used to try to do is, let's just say I wanted to make, a copy, 2 outlines of it, and kind of make a sticker or something like that. But as I would scale down, I would realize that nothing was aligning. Everything was kind of mixed up, and the edges aren't aligning. This is not looking right. It's not what I want. And I had no idea how to fix this for the longest time. I would just be like, oh, I guess this shape can't do this in Illustrator, especially when I first started. And even I might try to be like, okay, let me stretch it, try to make it fit, but all I'm doing is kind of just messing up this shape and skewing it, and this is not what I want to do. So as you can see, I'm just going to select this, and let me show you the tool that actually will change this for you. So I'm going to go up to Object. We're going to go all the way down to Path, and we're going to do Offset Path. This panel is going to pop up where you can adjust the spacing. So let's go ahead and just do like 20, and let's see how we think about that. And just like that, we're already kind of getting way better than my original duplicate and stretched down. And you can preview it as well as change some of these settings. And we have a perfect kind of all the corners are looking right. Nothing's looking really wonky. And this tool is a tool that I definitely use all the time in my workflow. Especially there's a lot of shapes that you'll have to use the offset path tool to get those perfect kind of lineups and corners. So this is an amazing tool to kind of add to, and to think about and know. I was really upset I didn't know about it for the longest time. You can also use this on text for cool effects. So let's just say, I wanted to kind of create, like almost make this look like a sticker. I want to kind of add a background that kind of molds to the text. And I'm not going to lie, when I first started using Illustrator, what I used to do is I would grab the pencil tool and be like, okay, I'm just gonna, try to draw it as realistically as possible. I'm also on a trackpad, guys, so don't judge me right now. But as you can see, this is like not the best case scenario to do this. And it's just gonna take me a long time. And most of the time I would just do it kind of over and over again until I got it right. But you can use the offset path tool for this as well. So I'm actually gonna select this text, same process. Let's go up to Object, Path, and let's go down to Offset Path. Now let's trust the process, guys. It's the same color. It's hard to see what I've got going on right now, but I'm actually going to increase this to like 40. I wanted to kind of consume, oh, let me type in 40. I want to change this to 40. I wanted to kind of overlap all the letters, and let's change the color and all of that. So let's go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to change the color really quickly. And I know you're probably like, whoa, that looks terrible. Just give me a second. Let me bring everything to the front and it'll be perfect. So let's go ahead and select all the letters. We want these to be arranged to the front. instead of the outline that we just created. So let's just bring all of this to the front. And as you can see, I'm getting that effect and it's kind of matching all of this nicely. It looks almost like a sticker versus when I used to try to draw it before. It would take me forever. I would just keep drawing and drawing and hope that I would get it right eventually. So that's a little bit about the offset path tool. Like I said, you'll use this tool, especially if you're a new user, you will use this tool a lot in your workflow to create badges, to create different kinds of effects. So let's go ahead and go to the next tool. This is actually not a tool. This is a way to make a heart in Illustrator. So let me check the chat. How are we doing? Hello. Hello, everyone's here. Oh, this is so awesome. Let me show you how to make a heart in Illustrator. I'm going to show you how I used to do it when I was a new user. So when I was trying to make hearts in Illustrator, I would just try to build it out with all these shapes. So let's change the color to pink, make a heart. I used to try to draw stuff out and say like, okay, like I think that's a good height. I'm just kind of playing this guessing game at this point to build this heart. I take my eclipse tool. Then I would be like, okay, I need to delete an anchor point. And as you can see, I'm just trying to build out this heart with all these different shapes. And you could do it this way. I mean, if this way works for you, that's great. But this really is a long way of doing it. And so I would sit here and try to align it. And then I would, rotate it, all this. And this is still, like I said, then I would try to copy and paste it. This is already taking me too long. I'm already annoyed. Let me show you how I make hearts now. I learned how to make hearts like this in the last probably like 2 years, and I've literally never looked back. You're actually going to go over to your pen tool, but first, let's actually just give it a stroke and not a fill color. So let's do that, and then I'm going to go over to my pen tool. Now, once I have my pen tool, I'm going to kind of zoom in so you guys can see. I'm going to actually just sketch out and do the pen tool, well, not sketch out, but lay points for a V shape to kind of help us create this heart. Once I have that, I think that's kind of even. I'm going to select this and I'm going to go over to the properties panel over here with the stroke weight. And as you can see, we're going to actually increase the weight of this. And you're probably thinking like, that looks terrible. What's going on with that? Let me zoom in. But we can actually change the cap to be a circle and we'll just kind of keep building out this heart. And slowly but surely, we will get a heart just like that. It's just a really neat way. Like I said, I learned how to make hearts like this like 2 years ago and I never looked back. And once we have this, like as you can see, we have a heart. And the last thing that you'll do is you'll actually select it and go up to object and we'll expand this out. And when we expand it, we just kind of make it an object and not just a stroke. And just like that, we have a heart. And you can also do it a different way. Like you could do it this way. Like I had my heart pretty spaced out. If you wanted your heart, more uniformed or more unique, you can adjust those lines to adjust how you make hearts. But I just wanted to include this in this series because this was something that I learned in Illustrator so long ago and I never looked back. And I tell everyone about how I make hearts now, especially even on social. So let's go over to the next tool I want to talk to you guys about. Let's zoom out all the way down. The next tool I want to talk to you guys about is the shape builder. So this is a pretty standard tool in Illustrator that everyone should know. I learned this one pretty quickly when I first got into Illustrator, especially as someone that was learning a lot about logo design and, creating different things with different, building out different icons and having a bunch of shapes. So this is actually the, type/sticker that we just messed with earlier where we created that offset path. And as you can see, when I created the offset path, it created all these different objects. So this is not a unified shape. This is just a bunch of objects. And this can get really annoying when you're trying to recolor things. Like I'm not recoloring this as one object. Maybe you're scaling stuff down and maybe you don't have every single thing selected. You can also group these, but this still kind of doesn't solve the problem of just kind of there's too many anchor points, there's too many shapes, and we don't realistically need those shapes to be separated. So this is where the shape builder tool would come in. You'll just select everything that you want to conjoin in a shape. You'll go over to the side and we'll have the shape builder. Once we have the shape builder selected, you will actually just drag and pull and make sure you hit all the areas of your shape. And just like that, it has now been united and created into one shape. So now you can recolor, you can scale things down easier. And like I said, this is a tool that if you're just learning Illustrator, you'll probably pick up really quickly, but also is a tool that you'll use really consistently in your workflow. I know I do. And so I'm going to take you through another example. Let's just say I created this OMG and I have all these different components because, the way I created it, I like to say that I create things in a way more complicated manner than they should be created in. There'll just be so many components to create one shape, and that's just like, I guess, how my brain works. So I have this back, same process, like there's three components, three different objects to kind of create this backdrop for OMG, and I want to unite them, same process, select, drag and pull, and it becomes one object. The thing about the shape builder tool that you have to be careful of is just making sure that you don't accidentally select something that you're not trying to conjoin. So it's just making sure you're selecting those exact objects, and then same process, got this selected, and then that O has become one object, making it way easier to, recolor, scale things down, and just making something like the objects cleaner in your Illustrator file, so you're not dealing with all these little components and kind of messing up your file. So the same process, drag and pull, just like that. OMG, that was so easy. Just kidding. So that's a little bit about the shape builder tool. It's an amazing tool to utilize especially if you're someone like me who just creates things with as many shapes as possible to create one object. So let's go over to the next tool that I want to talk to you about. This is a really awesome tool that I recently learned not too long ago. So I have this kind of heart pattern, and let's just say I wanted to recolor this kind of quickly, and there's all these different colors. So I have this kind of darker pink, I have this little bit of a lighter pink, and typically what I used to do when I would recolor stuff is I would just go through and do the long process of just selecting everything one by one. Like, I want to recolor all of this color, I'm just going to select it all one by one. But this can get really, really time consuming, especially if you have really complex patterns. And also if something is grouped, it gets really annoying to kind of just keep clicking and keep clicking to recolor this. So instead, let me show you an easier way. So I'm actually just going to select the color that I want to recolor, and I'm going to go up to select. We're going to go down to same, and we're going to do fill color. And once I do that, it automatically selects everything that's in that color, and I could just go over to my eyedropper tool and just click, and boom, just like that. We've recolored in way less time. We're not clicking around, being annoyed that we're missing things or trying to make sure we select everything, and taking a really excess amount of time to do that, as well as like this pattern's pretty complicated, but it's not as complicated as some of the other patterns I worked with where I'm trying to recolor something. So let's do the same process. I want to kind of change this color to this color. I'm going to select this, same process. We'll go up to select, we'll go down to same, and let's do fill color, automatically selecting all of the colors for me. And then I can just easily recolor just like that. So this is really a game changer when it comes to easily recoloring things in your workflow, especially for those really complex patterns. I can't tell you guys how long I used to spend just selecting each thing individually one by one and then being like, man, this takes forever. So that's a really awesome tool. Now, the next tool that I want to talk to you about is the recolor tool. One thing I want to point out is I actually have the contextual taskbar turned off, but you can go up to Windows and turn on contextual taskbar. Let me see, where'd it go? Let me try it again. Contextual taskbar. Oh, I guess it's not popping up. Let's see. Let's select something. There it is, the contextual taskbar. Now, I want to talk about the contextual taskbar briefly before I go into recolor. Let me check the chat. How we doing? Hello, hello. Everyone's doing good. Awesome, guys. Thanks for joining today. I want to talk to you about the contextual taskbar briefly. So this is actually a newer thing in Illustrator. The contextual taskbar was first introduced into Photoshop, and now it's moved into Illustrator. And if you're somebody who's new to Illustrator, it's an awesome tool to kind of keep open in your Illustrator because it's going to give you different options when you select things or you click on different things in Illustrator. So instead of having to go and find these tools in Illustrator, it's just right here in this bar for you. You can show You can pin it down, you can reset the position, you can also hide the bar. So you have the option to lock it in place. So it's just there for you whenever you're working and kind of speeding up your workflow. If you're someone who absolutely hates the contextual taskbar, you can turn it off just like how I did previously. I kind of flip between turning it off and on depending on what I'm working on. But I want to talk to you about recolor. So I have all of these different shapes and I want to recolor this really quickly. Maybe I'm just like kind of lost in the direction of color I should go. So this is actually in the contextual taskbar. You can just hit recolor. You can also find it up here. I think it's an object recolor as well, but I usually get it through the contextual taskbar now. And we'll have this panel now. This panel's been in Illustrator for a while, but you can actually play around with different things. It's showing the colors that are already in my artwork that I have. But it's just a really fun tool that you can just drag and just let it recolor stuff and play around with it. You can also pull the colors in and out, so you can make it kind of muted or make it really colorful. That's like really bright. That's like not really workable. But it's really fun just to kind of play around with and get introduced to new colors as you kind of recolor stuff. Maybe you want to go in a completely different color direction, depending on your workflow. But I think it's an awesome tool just to get introduced to colors or see your work really quickly in other colors. Just by dragging this alone, I'm able to see my work in another color that I may not have originally thought of as I'm playing around with this, as well as, this is kind of the all colors, but there are different color libraries that you can choose from that Adobe has set up in here. So anything from color books, art history, it will kind of change this panel right here so that you can easily recolor. Another thing that I want to point out is that you can do advanced options, which is where you can come in here and get really specific about a lot of these colors, where if you just don't like one color or one color is not working for you, you can adjust this to your liking to kind of perfect this color. So it's an awesome tool to get introduced to new colors. I also want to point out too that we have generative recolor in this. This is actually a newer feature in Illustrator. I'm just going to briefly show you this because I have actually shown this in my previous video around Illustrator tips because it was newer. So you can actually like write in your own prompts to kind of guide generative recolor to recolor this artwork to be whatever you want it to be. And we also have different prompts here. So you can do Summer by the Sea. We have some example prompts that you can kind of choose from and just play around with and see, your work in a completely different color, as well as writing in your own prompts. So that's a little bit about color and recolor. And another thing that I want to point out is if you don't like your generations, you can keep regenerating until you get the perfect. You're going to get 4 different variations to choose from. And let's just say, this is kind of in the direction that I want, but I want to adjust this to my liking. You can actually bounce right back over to recolor and then play around with this as well. So that they're kind of a really good combination of tools to kind of just get brainstorming about color and change your work in just a few clicks versus sitting here and recoloring everything. So that's a little bit about some of the tools in Illustrator that I think all users should know, especially if you are a new Illustrator or new to Illustrator. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.